Money has a way of exposing truths people try to conceal. I discovered this while standing outside my father's study, overhearing his discussion about my future, or more accurately, the absence of one he had planned for me. We can't afford both, Linda. Emily's law school has to take priority. Sarah will have to make do with the diner job, he said. My fingers clenched the door frame as I listened, with 22 years of being the family afterthought materializing in that moment. The golden child, Emily, would get her chance to become a prestigious attorney while I'd be serving hash browns at Pete's Diner. But Robert, we promised both girls we'd help with their education. My mother's voice wavered. Weak as always. Emily has real potential. Sarah just needs to be practical. I stepped back from the door, chest tight with something between anger and validation. All those years of telling myself I was imagining things that my parents couldn't possibly favor Emily so openly vanished in an instant. The house felt suffocating. I grabbed my keys and jacket, needing to escape before I did something rash like confront them right then. But fate had different plans. Sarah, where are you going? Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, perfect as always in her designer outfit. Mom's making dinner. Family night, remember? I almost laughed. Family night? What a farce. Not feeling well, I managed, heading for the door. Wait. Emily descended the stairs, concern etched on her face. Is everything okay? You look upset. Everything's fine, just like always. Perfect actually, just like you, I retorted. She flinched at my tone. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Just like my future apparently, I said as I slammed the door behind me with satisfying force. I made it halfway down the driveway before my father's voice boomed from the porch. Young lady, get back here right now. I turned, seeing him silhouetted in the doorway with my mother and Emily hovering anxiously behind him. 22 years of swallowed words rose in my throat.
Why?
So you can tell me to my face that I'm not worth investing in? That Emily is the only one who deserves a future? His face darkened. You were eavesdropping. Damn right I was, and I'm glad I did. Finally got some honesty around here. Sarah, please. My mother stepped forward. We can discuss this. Discuss what? How you've spent years funneling everything to Emily while telling me to be practical, to lower my expectations, to settle. Emily's face had gone pale. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, sis. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? My father's voice turned cold. That's enough. You're being childish and ungrateful. Ungrateful. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Ungrateful for what? A lifetime of being second best? The constant comparisons? Or maybe I should be grateful for the diner job you've so generously planned for my future. If you'd shown half the dedication Emily has, I got better grades than she did. I worked 2 jobs through high school while she went to dance lessons and tennis camp. I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. Silence fell. My mother was crying now. Emily looked stricken, and my father just looked disappointed as usual. If that's how you feel, he said finally, perhaps you should leave until you've calmed down and can be reasonable. Don't worry, I said, backing away. I'm done being reasonable. I'm done being practical. And I'm done being the family disappointment. I got in my car, hands shaking as I turned the key. Through the windshield, I could see them still standing there. The perfect family tableau minus the inconvenient second daughter who'd finally stopped playing her assigned role. As I drove away, one thought crystallized in my mind. I was going to prove them wrong. And when I did, they'd regret every moment they'd spent underestimating me. I ended up at Aunt Clara's house that night, my hands still shaking as I clutched a cup of chamomile tea. Her Victorian home had always been my sanctuary, filled with antiques and the lingering scent of lavender. Tonight, it felt like my last refuge. Your father called, Aunt Clara said, settling into her worn leather armchair. He seems to think you're being unreasonable. Of course he does. The tea burned my throat. Did he mention they've saved nothing for my education, or that they expect me to spend my life serving pancakes while Emily becomes a lawyer? Aunt Clara's eyes narrowed. No. He conveniently left that part out. A knock at the door made me jump. Aunt Clara touched my shoulder as she passed, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman of 70. I heard murmured voices. Then my mother's distinctive pleading tone. "Sarah, please, we need to talk." I set down my cup with enough force to splash tea onto the antique coffee table. "There's nothing to talk about." My mother appeared in the doorway, looking smaller than usual. "Your father didn't mean..." "Yes, he did." I stood up. "He meant every word. He always has." "You're both upset. If we could just sit down as a family." "We're not a family. We're Emily's support system, and I'm just the backup plan that never quite measured up." Aunt Clara returned, her face set in lines I recognized from childhood, the expression she wore when she was about to shake things up. "Linda," she said, "sit down. We need to discuss some things." My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, twisting her wedding ring. "Clara, this is between us and Sarah." "No, it's not." Aunt Clara opened a drawer in her desk, pulling out a thick envelope. "Sarah, I've been waiting for the right moment to give you this. I suppose that moment is now." The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Inside was a bank statement showing an account in my name, with a balance that made my eyes widen. "I started saving for both you girls when you were born," Aunt Clara said. "Your parents knew about Emily's fund, but I kept yours separate. I had a feeling you might need it more." My mother's face went pale. "Clara, you had no right." "I had every right. I've watched for years as you and Robert poured everything into Emily, while Sarah fought for scraps of attention. Well, now she has options." The numbers on the statement blurred as tears filled my eyes. College tuition, a future, freedom. "You can't do this," my mother whispered. "I already have." Aunt Clara's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "Sarah, the money is yours, no strings attached. You can use it for college, start a business, whatever you choose." My mother stood abruptly. "Robert will hear about this." "Good," Aunt Clara replied. "Tell him his sister sees exactly what he's done to his daughters, both of them." After my mother left, slamming the door behind her, I sat in silence, staring at the statement. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I eventually inquired to see if they would do the right thing on their own. Aunt Clara sighed. "I should have known better. Emily's fund is separate and secure. This isn't about punishing her, Sarah. It's about giving you the opportunity you deserve." I thought about Emily, the golden child, who never had to question her worth. "They'll try to make me share it with her," I thought. "They can try." Aunt Clara's smile was incisive, "But the account is solely in your name." I ensured that. As I looked at her, I saw the strength beneath her gentle facade. She had been strategizing, watching, and waiting, preparing for this moment. "What do I do now?" I asked. "Whatever you desire. That's the beauty of it," she leaned forward. "But might I suggest beginning with that business degree you've always dreamed of?" For the first time since overhearing my father's words, a flicker of hope arose within me, mixed with a fierce determination to show them what their practical daughter was capable of. "They'll never forgive you for this," I said. Aunt Clara's laughter was as dry as autumn leaves. "My dear, at my age, forgiveness is far less interesting than justice. Shall we look at college applications?" I smiled, feeling the weight of the envelope in my hands. It wasn't just money. It was ammunition, and I intended to use every bit of it. 3 months into my first semester at business school, Aunt Clara called with news that made my coffee turn cold. Emily's perfect life was unraveling, and for once, I had a front-row seat to the calamity. "Mark was arrested this morning," Aunt Clara said, her voice crackling over the phone. "Security fraud. It's all over the local news." I switched to speaker and pulled up the news site. There he was, Mark Johnson, Emily's boyfriend of 2 years, being let out of his investment firm in handcuffs. The golden boy, who charmed our parents at every family dinner, now faced accusations of running a Ponzi scheme that had cost his clients millions. "Emily must be devastated," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "That's not all." Aunt Clara paused. "She was involved, Sarah. She worked in the firm's legal department, and they're investigating her involvement. The satisfaction I expected didn't come. Instead, my stomach twisted. How bad is it? Your father's firm is distancing itself. They've placed her on indefinite leave. Your parents. Another pause. They're selling the lake house to cover her legal fees. The lake house, the very one they refused to mortgage for my education. My phone buzzed with another call, Emily's number. I declined it, watching it light up again immediately. She's been trying to reach you, Aunt Clara said. I'm not ready to talk to her. Sometimes people surprise us, Sarah, even those who have hurt us the most. I ended the call, sitting quietly as Emily's name flashed repeatedly on my screen. Finally, I picked up. Sarah. Her voice was raw, unlike her usual polished tones. I need your help. That's new. I deserve that, she breathed shakily. But please, just listen. I can't talk to Mom and Dad about this. They wouldn't understand. Understand what? That their perfect daughter isn't so perfect. That I knew what Mark was doing, and I turned a blind eye. The words tumbled out. I found discrepancies in the paperwork months ago. He convinced me it was just an aggressive investment strategy, that everyone did it. I wanted to believe him. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one who won't be shocked that I failed. Her laugh was bitter. You've been expecting it all along, haven't you? I contemplated the times I wished for this, for Emily to falter, for our parents to see her flaws. The reality felt empty. The investigators, she continued, are offering a deal. If I testify against Mark, they'll grant me immunity. But Mom and Dad keep talking about loyalty, about standing by him. They don't understand what he really is. And what's that? A monster in an expensive suit, her voice cracked, just like I was a fraud in designer clothes, pretending to be something I'm not. I closed my eyes, recalling all the perfect family photos with Emily always at the center, me relegated to the edges. Why should I help you? Because you're smarter than me, Sarah. You always were. You saw through everything. Our parents, their expectations, this whole facade. I need that clarity now. You want my advice? Take the deal. Burn it all down. Silence stretched between us. Will you come with me to the prosecutor's office? I thought about my morning class and the midterm I should be studying for. When? Tomorrow at 9? She hesitated. I know I don't deserve your help. No, you don't. I cut her off, but I'll be there, not for you, for the truth. After we hung up, I sat staring at my reflection in the dark window. The sister who had always lived in Emily's shadow was now the one she turned to for strength. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone lit up with a text from our father. Emily needs her family united right now. Whatever issues you have with us need to wait. I typed back 4 words, I'll handle it myself, just as I always had. Tomorrow, I'd watch Emily dismantle her perfect life piece by piece. Part of me would take pleasure in it. I wasn't saintly enough to pretend otherwise, but another part recognized something familiar in her voice. The sound of someone realizing their whole life had been built on shadows and lies. I opened my laptop and began researching securities fraud cases. If Emily was going to burn it all down, I'd make sure she did it right. After all, revenge is a dish best served with impeccable legal documentation. The Dean's List notification arrived the same morning as Emily's sentencing. I stared at both messages on my phone, wondering if this was karma's idea of poetry, top of my class in business school while my sister faced 18 months of probation and mandatory community service. My father's name lit up my screen. I hadn't spoken to him since the prosecutor's office, but I answered anyway. Your mother and I are having dinner at Lorenzo's tonight, he said, skipping any greeting. We need to discuss Emily's situation. I have exams. This is family, Sarah, more important than any test. I watched students stream past my dorm window heading to class. Funny how family wasn't more important than Emily's law school when it came to my education. That's not fair. Actually, it's exactly fair. Emily made her choices. She can deal with the consequences. She's lost everything, he said, his voice cracking. Her career, her reputation, and you're still more worried about her than anything else. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Proud of me? Silence stretched between us.
What do you mean? He asked.
I made the dean's list first semester of business school. Not that you asked. More silence followed. I could almost see him processing this information, trying to fit it into his worldview, where Emily was the achiever and I was the practical one. That's wonderful, Sarah, but right now Emily needs help. Of course. I laughed, the sound harsh to my own ears. You know what? I have to go. Good luck with dinner. I ended the call and opened my laptop, pulling up the business proposal I'd been working on. Greg Matthews, the restaurant chain owner who'd given me my first job, had mentioned an internship opportunity. My proposal was due tomorrow. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Emily stood there, looking smaller in jeans and a plain sweater, no longer adorned in designer labels. Aunt Clara told me about the dean's list, she said. Congratulations. I left the door open but returned to my desk. Thanks. She hovered in the doorway. Mom and Dad don't get it, do they? How hard you've worked. They don't want to get it. It doesn't fit their narrative. I didn't either, she admitted, stepping inside and closing the door. I believed what they believed, that I was the successful one, the one with potential. But you, she picked up one of my textbooks, you're going to surpass everything they ever imagined for me. Is that why you're here? To acknowledge my potential? No, she set the book down. I'm here because Dad called. They're planning to ask you for money tonight for my legal fees. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What? The lake house sale fell through? They're desperate. She wrapped her arms around herself. I told them not to ask you, but they won't listen. They still think they can fix everything for me. I turned back to my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. And what do you think? I think it's time I fix things myself, she said, moving towards the door. I got a job. Nothing special, administrative work at a small firm, but it's honest work. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right about everything. And I wanted you to know that before they tried to drag you back into their version of reality tonight. After she left, I sat staring at my business proposal. The internship would be demanding. 60-hour weeks, intense training, with no room for family drama, exactly what I needed. I opened my phone and typed a message to my father. Can't make dinner, deadline for an opportunity one can't miss. Emily knows how to reach me if she needs to. Then I turned back to my proposal, adding a final section about navigating complex business relationships and maintaining professional boundaries. Greg Matthews would appreciate the irony, even if he never knew the full story. My phone buzzed with responses from my parents, but I didn't read them. Instead, I focused on my work, letting their messages pile up like the years of expectations I was finally learning to ignore. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destroying someone else's dreams. Sometimes, it's about building your own, brick by brick, while they watch from the sidelines, finally understanding what they failed to see. Life has a twisted sense of humor. I discovered this standing outside Pete's diner watching Emily tie on the same apron our father had once intended for me. Her hands shook as she struggled with the strings, her manicured nails stark against the worn fabric. Greg Matthews stood beside me, his presence a reminder of why we were here. Your sister starts training today, apparently. I checked my watch. We should head inside. The investment meeting can wait 5 minutes. He studied Emily through the window. Interesting choice, her working here. Desperate times, I adjusted my blazer. The fabric smooth and expensive against my skin. It's the only place that would hire her with her record. The bell chimed as we entered. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes widening at my business attire. I pretended not to notice, leading Greg to our usual booth. Sarah. Emily approached, notepad trembling slightly. I didn't know you were coming in today. Monthly investment meeting with Greg. We always have it here. I kept my voice neutral. Coffee black. Greg, the same. He watched Emily hurry away. You didn't warn her? Should I have? The door chimed again, and our parents walked in, stopping short when they saw me. Of course, they'd come to support Emily's first day. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah. My mother stepped forward. We didn't expect, clearly. I turned to Greg. The projection reports show a 30% increase in revenue since implementing your new system. My father approached our table, his presence casting a shadow over our papers. You look well, Sarah. The business world suits you. Dad. Emily returned with our coffee, nearly spilling it. It's fine, Emily. I pulled out my laptop. They're here for you, not me. Greg and I have work to discuss. Actually, my father cleared his throat. We hope to speak with both of you about the family trust. The laptop screen blurred slightly. What trust? Your grandfather's. He glanced at Greg. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. Greg's my business partner. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of him. My mother touched Emily's arm. Sweetheart, maybe you should take your break now. The trust, my father continued, was meant to be split between you girls, but with Emily's legal fees and the conditions of her probation, the pieces clicked into place. You want my half? We want to protect your sister's future. Greg set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. Robert, perhaps this isn't the best time. When is the best time? My voice cut through the diner's morning chatter. When Emily needs more money. When you run out of ways to prop up her mistakes. Sarah, my mother pleaded. She's trying to rebuild. By taking my inheritance, after everything. I stood, gathering my papers. Greg, we should continue this at the office. Sarah, please. Emily stepped forward, still clutching her notepad. I didn't know they were going to do this. I told them not to. Save it. I met her eyes. You know what's funny? Dad always said I should work here because it was practical, because it was all I could hope for. Now look at us. My father's face darkened. That's enough. No, it's not enough. I turned to Greg. You know why I work so hard? Why I've doubled our profits in 6 months? Because they taught me that nothing would ever be handed to me, and they were right. The diner had gone quiet, other customers pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. Keep the trust, I said, gathering my things. Consider it payment for showing me exactly who I could become by being nothing like any of you. Greg followed me. Without waiting until we reached the car to speak, he acknowledged. That was quite a scene back there. I apologize. It won't impact our business, Sarah. He touched my shoulder and continued. I'm promoting you to regional manager. You've earned it. And it's evident you need to distance yourself from this town. I clutched my laptop tightly, knuckles white. Through the diner window, I watched Emily wiping tables, our parents hovering close by, still attempting to mend her life, while mine expanded beyond their influence. When do I start? I asked. How quickly can you pack? He replied. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting away. 6 months into my role as regional manager, Aunt Clara passed away. The news arrived via a text from Emily. Of all people, a brief message that disrupted my meticulously crafted new life. Aunt Clara's gone. I stood in my office, overlooking the Chicago skyline. My reflection ghostly in the window as the quarterly reports I'd been reviewing blurred into insignificance. My phone buzzed once more. Emily. The funeral's Saturday. She left something for you. I took the earliest flight home, arriving to find my parents' car already in Aunt Clara's driveway. Naturally, they'd be here, probably already dividing her possessions, just as they'd tried to carve out my inheritance. The key was still under the ceramic frog, her customary hiding spot. Inside, voices drifted from her study. We have to tell her, my mother was saying, before she finds out some other way. Tell me what? I asked, stepping into the doorway. They jumped, their faces guilty, as they turned toward me. Emily sat in Aunt Clara's chair, holding a familiar envelope. Sarah, my father stepped forward. We didn't expect you so soon. Clearly, I noted the open safe behind the desk, papers scattered across the surface. What are you doing? I asked. Emily held up the envelope. Aunt Clara left letters and recordings. She documented everything. My mother whispered. All our conversations about you and Emily, about the college fund, about how you were the backup plan for Emily. The words tasted bitter, confirming what I had already suspected.
No.
Emily's voice cracked, about how they planned to use both of us, how they orchestrated everything, pitting us against each other. Even Aunt Clara's money was part of their scheme. The room spun slightly. What? My father reached for me. Sarah, we can explain. Don't touch me, I interrupted. I snatched the envelope from Emily. Inside, I found a USB drive and a letter in Aunt Clara's elegant handwriting. My dear Sarah, by now you've realized your parents' manipulation runs deeper than imagined. The money I gave you wasn't mere savings, it was evidence. Every transaction, every conversation recorded. Your father's firm has been embezzling funds for years, using both you and Emily as unknowing cover. The letter slipped from my trembling hands. You used us, both of us? I accused. We were trying to protect the family, my father said. The firm was failing. So you set Emily up with Mark, knowing he was orchestrating a Ponzi scheme? I asked. Let her take the fall while you cleaned up the mess? Emily made a small, broken sound. They knew all along. They knew what Mark was doing. And me. I turned to my mother. Was anything genuine? Or was I merely another pawn in your game? We're still your parents, she pleaded. Everything we did was for the family. I laughed, a harsh, foreign sound. No, it was for you, for your reputation, your lifestyle, your precious image. My phone buzzed, Greg Matthews calling, probably wondering why his regional manager abruptly flew cross-country without explanation. Sarah, Emily stood up. Aunt Clara left something else, evidence that could expose everything. She wanted us to decide together what to do with it. I gazed at my sister, seeing not the golden child who had everything handed to her, but another victim of our parents' machinations. You knew? I asked Emily about the recordings. That's why you've been reaching out. She nodded. Aunt Clara informed me last month. She wanted us to know the truth before she couldn't tell us herself. My phone buzzed again, Greg's name flashing, a reminder of the life I'd built, the success achieved in proving my parents wrong. Yet they had known all along, maneuvering every turn. Relying on my ambition for success, Emily's downfall, our predictable reactions to their manipulations. Sarah, Emily's voice was fragile. What do we do now? I looked at our parents, strangers who had orchestrated our lives like a twisted chess game, then at Emily, who lost everything only to realize she never truly possessed it. My phone buzzed a third time. We do what Aunt Clara wanted. I decided. We decide together. But this time, we chart our own course. The USB drive felt substantial in my hand, loaded with truths capable of destroying our family or liberating us. The conference room at Matthew's Restaurant Group felt too confined for the magnitude of what we were preparing to do. Emily sat beside me, her waitress uniform replaced by a borrowed business suit, as Greg Matthews inspected the USB's contents on the projector screen. This is beyond embezzlement, Greg commented, pausing on a particularly damning spreadsheet. Your father's firm ran a sophisticated fraud scheme for years, utilizing both daughters as unwitting accomplices, Emily added, her voice hollow, a perfect cover story. The door opened, and our parents entered, accompanied by their lawyer. My father's confident stride wavered upon seeing Emily beside me. What is this about? Sarah, he tried his usual tactic of control. Your mother and I have a charity function. Sit down. My voice cut through his facade. You're going to want to hear this. Greg shifted to the next slide. Our father's signature on documents linking his firm to Mark's Ponzi scheme, evidence of shell companies in both Emily's and my names. Where did you obtain these? The lawyer leaned forward. Aunt Clara kept receipts. I met my father's gaze. All of them. This is absurd, he blustered. Emily, surely you don't believe. I testified against Mark. Emily interrupted. I can testify against you too. Our mother's impeccably manicured hand shook. We were protecting you both. By making me the scapegoat? Emily's laugh was embittered. By pushing Sarah into the restaurant business, so you'd have a legitimate front for laundering money? I placed 2 folders on the table. Option 1. We hand everything over to the FBI. You go to prison, the firm collapses, and the Thompson name becomes synonymous with fraud. Option 2. Our father's lawyer quickly requested. You sign these documents transferring the company's control to Emily and me, then retire quietly, move into that beach house in Florida, acquired with misappropriated funds, and never reach out to us again. You can't be serious. Our father stood. Everything I built was grounded in deceit. I remained seated, calm. Everything you made us believe about ourselves and each other was all part of your ruse. We're your parents. Our mother implored. We love you. No, Emily's voice quivered. You loved what we could do for you. There's a difference. Greg cleared his throat. The FBI has been informed. They're waiting for a call. You have 10 minutes to choose. Our father reached for the folders, but I pulled them back. One more thing. The diner, Pete's, you're signing it over to the staff. They've earned it. The diner? He looked puzzled. What difference does that make now? It matters because it's where this began, where you thought I belonged. I smiled, consider it karma. The minutes slipped by. Emily squeezed my hand under the table. Our parents whispered with their lawyer. Eventually, our father grasped a pen. You'll regret this, he said, signing. Someday you'll understand. We already understand. Emily took the pen, adding her signature where required. That's the problem. After they left, Greg reviewed the signed documents. You realize you've just become CEO of a major investment firm? Co-CEO, I corrected. Glancing at Emily if you want it. She straightened her borrowed blazer. I did pass the bar exam, even if I never practiced. Besides, someone should clean up their mess. And you? Greg asked me. Still interested in running my restaurant chain? I contemplated the diner, all the paths that led us here. Actually, I have some expansion ideas. Emily's firm could provide the capital. Legal capital. Emily added with a faint smile. We left together, leaving our parents' lawyer to tidy up his briefcase. Outside, the sun began setting over the city skyline. Was this the revenge you wanted? Emily asked softly. No, I confessed it's better. They wanted us to compete, to tear each other down. Instead, we're constructing something new. She squared her shoulders together. I nodded, watching our parents' car vanish into the traffic. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about dismantling what others built. It's about creating something they never envisioned possible. The key to Aunt Clara's house felt heavier than usual as I unlocked the door one last time. The realtor's sign in the yard cast long shadows in the evening light.
Inside.
Most of the furniture was gone, leaving only essentials Emily and I had decided to keep. Her footsteps echoed behind me as we entered the study. Found something else in the safe, she said, holding up a DVD case. It's labeled for Sarah and Emily. After we sat on the floor using my laptop to play the disc, Aunt Clara's face filled the screen, recorded months before her passing. My dear girls, she began, if you're watching this, you've uncovered the truth about your parents, but there's one more thing you need to know. Emily gripped my arm as Aunt Clara continued. Your parents didn't just manipulate you, they manipulated me too, made me think I was safeguarding you by keeping their secrets. It took me too long to understand that sometimes protection means letting the truth sting. The camera shifted, revealing documents, recordings, a lifetime of evidence collected not only against our parents, but an entire network of fraud. I'm not proud I waited, Aunt Clara's voice continued, but I wanted you both strong enough to handle what came next. Sarah, your business acumen, Emily, your legal expertise. Together you're more powerful than they ever imagined. Emily paused the video. She orchestrated this. All of it? No, I admitted. She equipped us with the tools to plot it ourselves. We watched the rest in silence, and when it concluded, I closed the laptop. Looking around the study, where everything originated. The diner staff signed the ownership papers today, Emily said. They're renaming it Clara's. I smiled, recalling our father's dismissal of my potential, his insistence that the diner was all I could aspire for. Now it would stand as a tribute to the aunt who saw what he couldn't. The FBI wants to interview Dad again, Emily continued. They've found connections to 3 more investment firms. Let them. We have our own empire to establish.
She examined me.
Do you ever wonder if we're just playing into their hands, transforming into what they wanted us to be? No, I stood, trailing my fingers along Aunt Clara's empty desk. They wanted us to compete, to tear each other down. Instead, we're stronger together. Emily joined me at the desk. The board meeting's tomorrow. Ready to announce the merger? Matthews Thompson Holdings. I tested the words. Think Greg will mind being the junior partner? He's receiving 3 new restaurant sites in the deal. He'll survive. We gathered our belongings, preparing to leave Aunt Clara's house for the final time. At the door, Emily hesitated. Sarah, that night you overheard Mom and Dad discussing the diner, was that truly when everything changed? I pondered it, recalling the anger, the hurt, the years of feeling second best. No, everything changed when I stopped allowing their version of me to dictate who I could become. And who are you now? The question lingered as I secured the door. Through the window, I glimpsed Aunt Clara's garden, still flourishing despite her absence. I'm someone who knows the difference between revenge and justice, I said finally, and more importantly, I'm someone who knows which one matters more. Emily nodded, comprehending. As we walked to our separate cars, heading to our distinct homes, but connected now by something stronger than shared pain or triumph. I started my engine, watching Emily drive off first. Tomorrow, we'd face the board, announce the merger, begin building something neither our parents nor Aunt Clara could have imagined. But tonight, in the quiet of Aunt Clara's empty house, I felt the last vestiges of my old self, the angry, overlooked second daughter, finally dissolve. The truth about revenge isn't that it heals you, it's that sometimes, in pursuing it, you discover something better, the power to rewrite your own story on your own terms. I pulled away from the curb, leaving Aunt Clara's house and all its ghosts behind. Ahead lay the future we'd chosen, not the one chosen for us, and that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all.